Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, depends on where you are in the world. It's great to be back again. It's a lovely sunny day here in southern England, so that's a pleasant surprise because we've had some pretty poor weather of late. So it looks like there's about a dozen people on the live stream at the moment. So welcome to all of you. If you are willing to, please do say hello in the chat. It's always nice to know who we've got attending, and obviously, if you have questions for me, please do put them in the chat or comments or observations. We've got a couple of people said hello. We've got Joshua. Not sure where you are, Joshua, but you're very welcome. And we've got Mrs. Slippery Ducky, Naomi from South Georgia. I'm going to guess that's... Oh, wow, actually... See, that could be South Georgia in the South Atlantic, British territory, or it could be the south of Georgia in Eurasia, or that could be south of Georgia in the United States. Statistically, I think it's most likely you're in the US, but do let us know. College student and have taken project management class. Love to learn more. Thank you for your live. Yep, it's my pleasure. You're very welcome. And we've got Hambo Gumble. Nods and waves. Hello, Hambo. Regular attendee, you can tell because his name is in blue in the chat, and he's got that little spanner, which means he can moderate should anyone be a bit naughty in the chat, and he can add links if he thinks there's something useful. So it's good to have you here, Hambo. And we've got Franklin Andrews from Naples, Florida. See, there's another example. Naples. If you just said Naples, I would have assumed southern Italy, but Naples, Florida. Yeah. Peter Davis, no, not Davis, Peter Davila from New Jersey in the US. I guess NJ is New Jersey. And then we've got James Jamston. It's Kieran from Edinburgh, works a project engineer in the marine propulsion industry. Wow, fantastic. Slippery Ducky, that's Naomi. L.S. Wonder what that means. United States, I guess, from Future Down. And then we've got Hakeem from Algeria. And we've got, I'm in northern Manitoba, Canada, a practicing project manager, self-learning to improve my PM skills and therefore the level of benefit I can get from my employer. And then we've got Stuart, the influential PMO, great YouTube channel. If you don't know him, I'm sure Stuart will pop a link to his channel in the chat at some point. He's also he's just got back from the dentist. Okay, so good luck on finding a dentist in the UK at the moment. So we've got plenty of people on the live stream at the moment, and you're all very welcome. And if you have questions, particularly those of you who are particularly here to, well, I suppose you're all here to learn, really. This isn't much by way of entertainment, but if you've got something you want to ask about, do pop it in the chat. This live stream will be very similar to many of the ones we've done recently. I have a prepared topic to talk you through, but as before, I will periodically check the chat, see if there are any questions that you want me to deal with, and I'll be happy to do that. I like answering questions. Next time, however, may be a little different, so hang on to the end to find out what I'm planning, or a little bit of what I'm planning for the next live stream. And we've got William Howard from Atlanta, GA, Georgia, I guess. Not sure. Yeah, there is an Atlanta in Georgia, so I'm going to guess GA is the short form for Georgia. So, welcome to all of you. What news? Not a lot of news. What have we got? Well, I suppose a little bit of news is that the PMI have produced their Pulse of the Profession. There's my black and white copy that I printed off. The Pulse of the Profession is a survey that PMI does nearly every year. They skipped a year last year and didn't do one. Historically, it was a whole load of questionnaires from which they drew some fairly non-controversial, fairly straightforward conclusions. More recently, they seem to have slewed the questionnaires to try to investigate a particular topic, and I have been critical of some of their more recent ones, that they seem to be looking to find the answer they were looking for, particularly in their one about power skills. I've thought some of their Pulse the Profession reports have been a little weak. I confess I've not yet read this in depth. It's quite a long one. What does it play out at? 40 odd pages. Not so odd, I suppose. There seems to be quite a lot of narrative in here. It seems to be focused on well, its subtitle is The Future of Project Work, Moving Past Office-Centric Models, but the first section does seem to be a little bit about different types of hybrid project management models. So I think this one's going to be interesting. Be interested to see how robust is the link they draw between the findings of the statistical surveys and the conclusions they draw from them, because that has been a weakness in the past. But this looks interesting, and as usual, I will be, if it's good enough, if there's enough meat in here, I will be doing a feature article on that for the website over the next 2 or 3 weeks. So I'll try and get something up there. So keep an eye on the website if you're interested in Pulse the Profession. But what I will do, for those of you who can't possibly wait until I give you my opinion and want to form your own opinion, how dare you, let me post into the chat a link to that. You should be able to find a report. If you can't navigate the internet these days to find a report on a named website, the PMI website, then you really oughtn't to be a project manager. But to make life easy for you, I put a link in the chat. The only other little thing of news that I've got, those of you who are right at the start of your project management career, thinking about how do you get into project management, how do you learn about it. One of the products I built very, very early on in 2016, right at the start of online PM courses, was an email course, a course of 10 emails called the Project Manager's Secret Success Formula, which was designed to give you an email every week that took you through the process of creating a project and running a project for people who had never done it before. And my main audience was people who had fallen into project management, knew they needed to manage a project. It wasn't a big project, nothing big complicated, don't need lots and lots of fancy stuff, but wanted to know the basics and wanted to have their hand held through that sequence. So the Project Manager Secret Success Formula has sold, I'm not sure it's sold thousands, but it's sold hundreds, and it's very popular. But a few people over the time said, can we, rather than just kind of copy and print all the emails, is it possible to have it in book format? And so the answer has always been really not sure about that. But I recently updated the whole course, went through the whole course and produced and just updated it, improved it where I could, and added quite a lot of links to videos on YouTube here for users to make it even more valuable. And in the process of doing that, of course, I had to copy all of the, well, I didn't have to. The way I chose to work was to copy all of the emails into a document file so that I could print it out and read it and review it. And that meant I had it all in a document file, and I thought, you know what, this could be the spur to formatting it as a book. And so I've done that. And so anyone who's interested in the Project Manager's Secret Success Formula as a book can now buy it for not very much on your local Amazon, either in Kindle format, or you can order a print-on-demand paperback. Mine hasn't arrived yet, so I can't flash one in front of the screen, I'm afraid. So I will paste the link to that in the chat as well if you're interested. So nothing to wave at the screen there, but it's available. Actually, what I could do is go find it on Amazon just so you can see it. Let's have a look if I can do that. There it is. Let me hop over to my screen and show you that. So there it is, Project Manager Secret Success Formula. Depends on what country you're in, how much you pay for it, but it's $11.99 as a paperback, or in Kindle. This seems to want to Oh yeah, £5.99. So I think it's about $6.99 in the States. So you can download that. So that's available for you if it's something that interests you. Yeah. Right. Back to the chat. Let's see what we've got here. Anything new turned up? I think we saw William Howard. We've got Alfred Adu Bobi. Alfred from London, Ontario, interested in managing projects effectively. We all are. Why would you manage them any other way? Then we've got Wangila Edward from Kenya, taking project management in my university, interested to learn more. Brilliant. It's always good to hear about people studying it academically. I hope you'll be able to get a chance to put some of your academic learning into practice soon. Ambo Gumbo, off tangent but pertinent to moving beyond office-centric space. And he's provided a link. I'm not going to click that now, but do kind of store that in your memory. Usually Hambo has interesting ideas to share. So thank you very much. So today's topic is about navigating project crises. Now, I have a confession to make. I wanted to do an experiment. I couldn't think of a topic, and I think I said at the end of the last live stream that I would do live streams based on if I had a brilliant idea that I wanted to do, or someone came to me with a topic. But I kind of wanted to do a live stream, but I wasn't sure what to do. So I asked ChatGPT, I asked Gemini, Poe, Claude, and Grok, a whole bunch of AI, generative AI, large language model tools. I said, give me 10 ideas for a project management live stream that would interest a wide range of project managers, but not necessarily just be boring and dull. I think that wasn't quite the prompt. Let me find the prompt. I think I wrote it down here. Yes, so the exact prompt was, please suggest a framework for a 45-minute presentation about how project managers can deal. Oh no, that's the second part. I can't remember what the prompt was, but I asked for ideas, and I got literally 10 ideas by about 5 different tools. There was a lot of overlap. I would say not a single idea was a bad idea. Some of them I'd already done. Some of them didn't interest me. A few of them I didn't feel like I could do without a fair bit of research. But a couple of them suggested the idea of project crisis management. And I thought, that's great. I like that topic. It's relevant. And then just as an experiment, I put into the same 5 tools, please suggest a framework for a 45-minute presentation about how project managers can deal with a crisis in their project. For each section, suggest how a slide could illustrate the point. Now, not all of these AI tools completely met the brief in terms of the way I asked them to do it, but all of them, so this is Claude, ChatGPT, Poe, Gemini, Perplexity, and Grok, all of them produced a very credible synopsis for the session. There was a lot of overlap, as you'd expect. They all had broadly the same things. Some of them were better than others. I would say that, in particular, ChatGPT and Poe did well, and one other. Which was the other one that did really well? Oh, Gemini did really well. Perplexity did pretty well too. Grok did quite well, and I think the weakest was Claude. So I thought that was fascinating. I actually just went through and picked and chose from them to the bits that I thought, and then I thought, well, okay, they're only an outline, so it's quite legitimate for me to then fill in that outline with my understanding and interpretation. So I am not giving you what they suggested. I didn't ask them to generate any images. Some of them did suggest images, not all of them did. Some of them actually just basically described what content would be on the slide. Which one was that? That was Poe, but didn't actually suggest images. I haven't taken most of their image suggestions. I think there's one image in here which actually came from one of the suggestions. So that's the origin of this this session. But I promise you, it wasn't written by AI. It was written by HI, human intelligence. So hopefully, if it's good, you'll appreciate it's mine, and if it's bad, well, it's down to me. And maybe I should have just picked one of those and then asked them all to develop that and write me a script based on it, which I could have done, but I didn't choose to do. So before we kick off, anything new? We've got Orlando, love your content, Mike. Thank you very much, Orlando. And Tunde Ade is here. Welcome, Tunde. It's good to have you back. I should also say, by the way, that I've had a cough over the last few weeks. Excuse me. So my breath is a little low. So I get excited, I talk too much, and I run out of air. So excuse me. Right. Okay, let's pop over to the screen then. That's not a very good way of doing it, is it? That's better. So, project crisis. So we're going to talk a bit about the idea of what a crisis is and how to manage it as a project manager. And this is important, not because it's going to happen very often, but because if it does happen, you need to be prepared. Now, some of you will focus on managing small projects where there really isn't going to be a crisis linked to the project. But as you move up the scale of projects, it becomes the possibility that something massive will go wrong, which you need to respond to quickly. And that's what this is all about. So let's have a look at our agenda. Which, by the way, is pretty much the structure that ChatGPT suggested. Understanding crises. We'll look at what a crisis is, what causes crises, and also how you can spot them, what are the leading indicators that tell you crisis is on its way. Secondly, we'll look at how do we prepare ourselves to deal with a crisis. Then we'll look at the crisis response itself. And finally, recovery and learning. You'll probably be familiar now with the fact that I love, I love 4-step processes. So that's our agenda, and we'll start off with understanding crisis. What is a crisis? Very, very simple, I think. A crisis, to be a crisis, there has to be a threat. Something bad could happen. It has to happen suddenly. And therefore, whilst you may have prepared for it, its actual happening is something of a surprise. If there's a long wind up to it, it's not a crisis, it's just an issue that you're dealing with. And finally, there has to be a sense of urgency. That's to say that you need to deal with things quickly because the events are happening fast, and if you don't deal with them quickly, they'll get bad or worse very quickly. So that's kind of my 3 criteria for what makes a crisis. And I think that kind of short time to respond is the one that gives us a lot of the characteristics. That urgency thing gives us a lot of the characteristics of how we need to go about managing it. So we will come back to that urgency, short time to respond kind of factor. Now, the other thing I kind of do want to kind of preempt is is the question, how does crisis management differ from disaster recovery or business continuity? So I would say that crisis management is about dealing with a significant disruptive event. Yeah, and that disruptive bit is the threat, really. And a significant, I suppose, is important because if the threat is tiny, then it's not a crisis, it's just a hassle. Business continuity is I would say a subset of crisis management, but it's the subset that deals with maintaining operations and your ability to serve your customers, to look after your people following a disruptive event. So, in a way, it's what you do immediately after you've dealt with the crisis response. But it's a kind of part of the whole crisis management process because, as I've said, the recovery and learning is part of managing crisis. And disaster recovery is about recovering the use of critical technology infrastructure, usually your IT and your communications infrastructure, after that disruptive event. So because your technology infrastructure serves your need to provide operations and service and all of that, I see disaster recovery as a subset of business continuity, and business continuity as a subset of crisis management. So crisis management is the big thing, and there are other things. There's reputation protection as well, which we won't go into. The idea that actually when you have a crisis in an organization, that can affect your reputation, so you need reputation management as well. Many years ago, I got really interested in reputation protection. It was when I was delivering a Year 2000 program, and we needed to think about how would we protect the reputation of the organisation should anything go wrong. Luckily, we did our job well and nothing went wrong, so there were no reputational hazards, and there wasn't a crisis because we got everything right. But we did a lot of this work in the run-up to the Year 2000 event, alongside the main work of trying to make sure that the Year 2000 event was a non-event, which it largely was for my client. And thanks to engineers, software engineers, project program managers around the world, it was largely a non-event around the world, which is really pleasing. So that's what a crisis is. So the next question is, what are the causes and what are the signs? So the causes, I think we can narrow the causes down to three things: complacency, overconfidence, and a series of failures. That's what causes a crisis, really. Complacency, and largely that's about complacency about our readiness. But I think complacency also includes the fact that we are weak vessels as human beings. We make mistakes, we have biases, and we often do things for the wrong reasons, even the best of us at times, and not recognizing that all of these are failure points in the system, and that there are a lot of people in and around our projects, in and around our organizations. We become complacent about that, things go wrong. And then, of course, there are random, unpredictable events, like weather, like earthquake, volcanism. Now, I'm very fortunate. I live in the UK, where I think the biggest earthquake in the historical record brought down a few dozen buildings, and I'm not even sure there was loss of life, but it wasn't in double figures, that's for sure. We don't tend to have volcanism here. We're nowhere near plate boundaries. The worst we tend to get is wind, bad wind, and occasional snowstorms. But globally, there are places that are, frankly, sitting on massive volcanoes or massive fault lines. There are places where we get massive weather features like hurricanes and typhoons. And let's not forget that the whole world is probably due fairly soon a massive sunspot solar wind event. Around the turn of the 19th to the 20th century, I think it was, there was a massive, what was it, a bit later, but there was a massive sunspot event which caused lots of early electricity systems to fail. If that event had happened, the same event happened now, it would probably take out a huge proportion of our satellites that are in the direction of the sun at the time. It would take out a lot of our electricity transmission capability. It would take out a lot of our telecom systems. We can only hope that when this happens, it's the Pacific side of the planet that is facing the sun to minimise disruption to continental land masses. Worst case, this could affect both of the Americas, Africa, Europe, and Asia and Australasia all simultaneously. It could be massive. I mean, we're now talking about the kind of crisis that's outside of our hands, but we just need to be aware of these things. So, I was just talking about complacency, and what else? Other causes. Overconfidence. We put together our plans, and then we start to believe them. That's foolish. We have systems and processes that work today in the situations they're in, and we become overconfident in them, and we become overconfident in the people around us as well. And as a result of all of this, we fail to notice outside influences. It's that old kind of metaphor of a frog in a pot, and the water's getting warmer and warmer, and we don't notice it. We fail to predict the possibility of human error, human failings, and we fail to heed warnings. People were saying for a long time that we are overdue a flu pandemic. Now, we haven't had a massive flu pandemic in recent years, but we had COVID, which actually fundamentally is a cold pandemic. Is evidence that the COVID viruses are becoming part of the cluster of viruses that make up the common cold, and that's what's likely to happen. So it's not surprising that we had a pandemic. What took us unawares was the timing, and we hadn't prepared for it. And countries like mine had had warnings and had not heeded them. And the leading indicators of project crises are things like milestones being missed, unclear answers to direct questions about schedule from your team, people cancelling meetings or rescheduling, or things like that suggest that they're hassled, and therefore there is schedule risk. Seeing your schedule contingency getting used up, of course, is another one. If there are kind of planned events that are going to eat into your time, for example, labour strikes, then those all suggest schedule risk. And we get similar things with budget risks, which can lead to budget crises. Rate of spend goes way up, rate against plan. Contractors make significantly more claims for contract variations than you expected. Masses of change requests. Unplanned changes in the number of people you start to see on site. And maybe we've got economic indicators which suggest that your cost of finance is going up, there's inflation in the cost of the materials you're using, perhaps foreign exchange rates affect the cost of the materials you're buying in or the equipment you're buying in. So those suggest that you're going to have potentially a crisis on the way. You might see staff performance issues. Increased absent rates, morale going down, turnover going up. You might start to hear some news or rumours about one of your main suppliers, one of your main contractors, and maybe adverse news stories which suggest there's a problem there. You may start to be hearing from stakeholders that you've not heard from, which could suggest that there's going to be challenges to your project design or your scope. You could start to see failures on testing, suggesting that the technology is not working. There may be component failures. There may be interim deliverables that are of poor quality. And of course, the other big area we must consider is governance. Governance is there to kind of save us from these problems, but if governance starts to fail because the sponsor's not paying attention to their job, or the board meetings are getting cancelled, or not being taken seriously, people not turning up to them, maybe senior management are just not paying attention to your project, all of those can be signs that there is a crisis on the way. So, how do we prepare? Well, I think there are three things to consider. Firstly, we need to assess, then we need to plan, and then we need to maintain our awareness our situational awareness for what's going on. Excuse me. Let's start with assessment. We need to be constantly identifying and assessing risks, looking at potential scenarios, and building contingency plans. Let's not forget that contingency plans would allow us to respond to some of the leading indicators before the crisis arises. So a lot of this is good quality risk management, but it's taking it seriously. It's allocating sensible amounts of contingency. And then we need to take all of that and build plans. We need a crisis management plan in place before the crisis emerges. And a crisis management plan is a tool that enables the people dealing with the crisis to operate effectively. Now, I would argue that it needs to be simple and broad brush, because if you could predict the details of the crisis, then you could avert it. But we can't. So it needs to be very, very simple, very broad brush. And to my mind, the key elements of a crisis management plan are: what are the roles of different people and the responsibilities they'll have if a crisis emerges? Who's going to be the crisis coordinator? Who is going to deal with these sort of things? Who's going to deal with those sorts of things? Secondly, what are the rules? What can we and can't we do? What are the priorities, if you like? So roles, rules, and then resources. What are the resources a crisis team can call upon to help them deal with the crisis? And that might include things like telephone lists or contact lists. It might include things like materials, communication tools, whatever. Now, the other reason I would say it's absolutely vital. Let's do this to camera. The other reason I'd say it's absolutely vital is because it is no good having a crisis management plan that is a 300-page document in a ring binder stored in the office. When we were coming up to year 2000, I used to go around the country doing talks. There was a conference company, I don't know if they're still in existence, but they used to arrange year 2000 talks as one of their things, and they got people from the different consultancies and big business who were really tackling things well to come and talk to it. And because I was leading one of the biggest year 2000 programs that Deloitte was leading in the UK, I quite often got invited. And I remember sharing a platform with one guy from a crisis management consultancy, and he talked about the fact that when he runs crisis management rehearsals, he will tell the team that we're going to run it on Saturday morning. So I'm not going to tell you what the crisis is, but you need to turn up to the office at 9 a.m. on Saturday morning for your briefing. And they'd all turn up to the office, and the office would be cordoned off. He put tape around the door and said, "No entry. This building is not safe. You may not enter." And they said, "Well, hold on a moment. We've got to go in. We've got to pop upstairs, get hold of the crisis manual." And he said, "No, you can't. You can't work in the office. You can't have anything that is in the office. You need to manage the crisis. I will give you the scenario without access to your office or anything in it." And the learning that he was trying to get across is that if you are not sufficiently prepared, having access to the materials you need without relying on the office, then you don't have a crisis management plan. So by keeping it simple, and everyone who is involved in the crisis team having the phone numbers they need on the phone, and that's what makes it work. And the other thing about a plan is I think you need a well-defined communication plan that says what are your priority communications, who are the stakeholders that you need to communicate with, and how do you get hold of them. So let's go back. Excuse me. The third element is awareness. Once you've done your assessment, you've got your plan, you need to maintain this constant awareness so that you can be alert to the various different leading indicators that we talked about. And this is a combination, I think, of periodic, deliberate horizon scanning, getting a small number of varied people together to think about what is coming over the horizon. What are the, if you like, the spectres of crisis that are over the horizon? What are the social, the political, the environmental, the commercial, the technological, the regulatory, the economic, and the security or safety related indicators that are suggesting that maybe something's bubbling up. I also like the idea of a next bend process. I've talked about this on a number of live streams. I think the idea of, as a project manager, taking time out once a week or once a fortnight, just half an hour, take yourself and a notebook to a coffee shop or something and just sit and think about what is it that is coming around the next bend that we're not thinking about, that we need to be thinking about. Then, of course, there's the absolutely classic monitor and control loop, the plan, do, check, view loop, the OODA loop, whatever you call it. When you think about monitoring your project and controlling what's going on, are you using that cycle, and are you cycling around that cycle fast enough? Fourth, to my mind, critical for being aware of potential for crisis is what I call taking the temperature of the team. I like the idea of management by walking about as a project manager. And the way I used to do this was towards the end of the working day, I would wander out and drop in wherever my team or elements of my team were working. Now, if we weren't all co-located in the same building or nearby buildings, that won't always be possible. But where you've got elements of your team scattered around a building, just wander around the building, pop into each room where you've got team members and start chatting with them. You very quickly will tell the temperature of the team and therefore the state of the team. If people are happy to chat with you towards the end of the day about nothing in particular, then and while they're packing up, then things are all right. If on the other hand you get the sense that they can't really face chatting about nothing because they're in a hurry to get on back to their work and they feel pressured, then you know that things are not all right, and that you need to find out in a formal way the next day, or maybe even then and there, what is it that they're anxious about that is stopping them from engaging in banter, and get onto it. And then finally, critically, make sure that your regular project reporting cycle makes use of bottom-up reporting. Gather the data first and then look for patterns in the data, rather than take what you think you know about the project, write your executive summary, and then look for the charts and the data that will support that, because that creates confirmation bias and you will miss the important things. So that's our preparation. Excuse me. Now we need to think about crisis response. What actually happens when there is a crisis? And I'm going to divide this into two slides: immediate priorities and second priorities. And the immediate priorities, basically, stop doing whatever you're doing and then get onto the three priorities of evaluate what's going on, mobilize or regroup, get your team together, and stabilize the situation. Very quickly figure out what is going on, gather information, assess it quickly, and you'll be doing this in parallel with mobilizing your team, getting them together. Maybe this is a dedicated crisis response team, maybe this is grabbing the people who are available and getting them working quickly on understanding the situation, that evaluate things. So these are happening in parallel, and the purpose of all of this, first and foremost, is to stabilize the situation, to make sure that things are not going to get worse. So if you have a burst pipe, make sure you turn off every tap you can, and so that you can mitigate the impact before you start trying to fix what's the causes are, you need to stop things getting worse. Stop the water. Put buckets out. Whatever. Then you can move on to the secondary priorities of getting your tools out and fixing it. So this is remediation. This is figuring out, okay, what do we need to achieve to get a fix? Define, set deadlines, set goals, whatever, and then allocate people to tasks. But during remediation, things are likely to be changing fast, so you need to be prepared for constant adaptation and rapid decision making. And the best way to get rapid decision making is to delegate responsibility so that there are no delays, people finding the crisis manager for their view. What we actually want is people to have the authority to look at the situation, understand it, and adapt quickly and make decisions quickly. We also need to be communicating now with our stakeholders, and we need to be doing this transparently and honestly. So, as you probably know, I sell courses. And the platform I sell courses from, and I don't know whether Stuart's still listening, but I know he sells his course from the same platform. I didn't get paid this month. Now, they are very, very, very good at paying on, as it happens, the first of the month. That's their payment date, unless it's not a working day. But it was a Friday, so I didn't think anything of it. But then when I didn't get paid by Monday lunchtime, because it's an American company, so I thought give them till lunchtime here in the UK, because that's the start of their working day. When I didn't get paid, I put in a question. Why have I not been paid? And they said, oh, don't know. We'll find out. It was only shortly after that their website status said, we've got a problem with the payments. Which kind of suggested to me they can't not have known that on Friday. They can't not have known that coming into work on Monday morning. But they chose not to make that known. Now, I don't know how many people it affects, and maybe they didn't want to knock the confidence of all the people who have got paid. And by the way, I'm not dependent on receiving that money now, so it's no big deal for me. It's not, we're fine. But they should have simply emailed everyone whose money hadn't arrived as soon as they knew that the money wasn't going out, and said, we know you haven't received your money. We are working on it. Now, they, as far as I understand, they haven't got a fix yet. I didn't check just before the call, before the live stream, but it's okay to say we don't know what the problem is. We haven't solved it. We will working diligently, but honest, open, transparent communication with your stakeholders is vital if you are going to protect your reputation. Now, what you might say if actually the reason why this has all happened is because we've done something really stupid. We don't want to let everyone know we've done something really stupid. Well, guess what? People will find out. So fess up, say sorry, and put it right. That is the basic rules of reputation protection. Own up to the things that have gone wrong, and to a degree to the reasons. Say sorry quickly. Tell people what you are doing to put things right, and get on it. And people who say, well, we can't, we haven't got the time to work on the problem and communicate the problem. Yes, you have, because there are always going to be people in your organisation who are not able to work on the problem because they don't have the skills. But you know what? They can draft an email. Sorry, it kind of sounds like I'm bitter about this. I'm not. I'm not bitter about the fact that I've not been paid, because I'm sure I will be. I'm confident I will be. I'm kind of disappointed that the company has gone from what it was a number of years ago to what it is now, where they won't even kind of communicate that they're not delivering the money that they owe us. Anyway, so communication, really important. And the last of the three of our secondary priorities is motivation, because Crisis response is draining, it is stressful, and it is tiring because quite often we are working hard for a protracted period of time, harder than we normally work, and possibly longer hours. Which means that whoever is leading the crisis team needs to build into their crisis kind of immediate remediation plan some element of rest time for people to manage their stress. And sometimes it is true that you need to go slowly to achieve things quickly. Taking rest can speed up the process, but as a minimum you need to be motivating and supporting your people, spotting where the levels of tiredness and stress are not just not helping, but particularly where they are causing new risks, new dangers to people's health. Mistakes happen when people are tired and stressed, and that means they can make things worse. And remember, our first priority included stabilising the situation, making sure things don't get worse. So if you have a tired team who are at risk of making things worse, then you are going in your second priority of remediation, going against your first priority of stabilising. So we just keep on working at the remediation, constant adaptation, constant rapid decision making, communicating with our stakeholders honestly, openly, transparently, and all of that until we fix the situation. Excuse me. Let's just have a quick look. I've seen a couple of things come in. What have we got? We've got Geronimo Ukoyo. What the Brits would say, lack of foresight. I feel fancy today. Lack of foresight. I think that must have come in when we were talking about not leading indicators, failure to notice what's going on, I guess, when we're talking about causes. And then Geronimo, I hope I'm pronouncing your name right. Don't even know where you're from, but it sounds kind of Latin American or Spanish. I'm going to go with Spanish or Portuguese. Would you say compliance specialists have a good translation of risk management to projects? I found my knowledge of risk management so critical for PM. Well, of course, compliance specialists understand one particular subset of the risk profile, which is non-compliance risks, very deeply. Plus, they have a good general knowledge, I guess, like the rest of us, of other types of risks. So, if you're in compliance, you can spot a number of risks, detailed risks that other people aren't going to spot. Now, as a project manager, the risk is that you over-focus on one area of risk, compliance, because that's what you know. What we find in the world of forecasting, and Philip Tetlock discovered this, and you can read his fantastic book Super Forecasters. What he found was that actually the experts tend to be poorer at forecasting. I know that's not quite the same as risk identification and analysis, but experts tend to be poorer at forecasting because they believe their expertise gives them special knowledge, and therefore they are less alert to influences outside of their area of expertise. So being a specialist in anything is a double-edged sword, particularly when you're working in a broader area. Oh, we've got K7SW ham radio. I can't remember call signs, but I don't know any other ham radio people who have a YouTube channel. So if that's you, Kevin, welcome. It's great to see you. Be nice to see you on Wednesday evening if you can join the group. I must deal with crisis every day being in IT. Planning is crucial, yes, and of course being in IT, the on-off switch I think is also critical. So it's good to see you, K7SW, and it'd be good to see you tomorrow if you're around at the same time. So for those of you who are kind of wondering what am I talking about, it's K7SW Ham Radio is a YouTuber, part of a kind of mastermind group that I'm in, where we support each other with our YouTube channels. And if you're on here and run a YouTube channel actively and want to develop either your YouTubing or filmmaking skills and knowledge, drop me a line outside of this context and let me know what your channel is, and we'll invite you to join, because we're actually actively looking to increase numbers. Anyway, that covers the top chat, so let's look at what happens after the event. I think there are three things that you've noticed most of these are lists of 3 or 4. 3 things after the event. Firstly, we need to get back to normal. We need to take our recovery and then return to normal. This is, by the way, is where business continuity and disaster recovery kind of come in. They overlap the remediation thing and the back to normal thing. And hopefully now you've fixed all the problems. So you now need to let people relax, get some rest and relaxation, and then pick up the cadence. And that might mean, in a project context, replanning the project, because you've A, lost time, and B, probably spent some budget, and C, the landscape may well be different now to the way that you had assumed when you made your plan. So back to normal might mean replanning your project. Secondly, retrospective. You need to learn lessons. You need to evaluate what you learned from the crisis, what you learned from the way you handled the crisis, document those lessons learned, and then, in the spirit of continuous improvement, or Kaizen, I just didn't think continuous improvement would fit very well onto that line, we need to take our lessons learned and update our crisis plan, update our understanding of anything that the crisis has touched on, and make sure that the individuals involved get good quality feedback, praise and celebration for their efforts, of course, feedback on their performance, and make sure they have an opportunity to kind of learn personally what, and reflect on what their experiences have been, so that they can take that into their next role. So that is the 4 steps of crisis management for project managers. So we've looked at understanding the crisis, preparing for the crisis response, and then recovery and learning. What am I promoting today? Well, I guess I'm going to promote the book that comes closest to this topic, which is my book Risk Happens, which, as you'll know if you're a follower of the channel, the 2nd edition of my book, the 1st edition went out of print when the publishers decided to pull out of the paperback business, and so when copies ran out on Amazon and in the warehouses, I got the rights back and I brought out a 2nd edition with some new content in it as well. So those of you who fancy that, either as an ebook, Kindle ebook, or as a paperback, I can wave that at the camera actually, so we can go over to a live view of what this book looks like. There we go. That's the 2nd edition. That's the edition I produced. You see, very cleverly, I kind of stole the design from the 1st edition, which had kind of pink and blue, and then I went for a kind of yellow and blue design, and kind of put the stripes in a different direction. But basically, it's the same design, because I figured, why not? So 2nd edition, slightly better than the 1st edition, I would say. So it's not expensive. So if you're interested in risk management, that's that. If you want something, by the way, this is, I would say, a significant step up from the kind of risk management you'll get on a basic project management course, or in, I don't know, the APM's Body of Knowledge, or the PMI's Guide to the Body of Knowledge, or Prince 2. It's a substantial step up. This is kind of at the same level as the management of risk methodology that goes alongside Prince 2, or of the PMI's risk management, what's it called? Practice Standard, or the APM's Guide to Risk Management, which I believe they're updating. So this is kind of runs along that sort of level, but easier to read and methodology agnostic. For those of you, by the way, who want something more advanced, I have absolutely no idea whether it will be more advanced, but my friend and project manager extraordinaire, Glenn Alleman, is bringing out a new book. It's only his 2nd book. His first one is fantastic. It's not available yet, but Risk Management, Managing Tomorrow's Threats will be available soon. So I'm hoping I'll be able to interview Glenn for the channel. I've got some fantastic interviews lined up. I've already done an interview with an expert on project definition who is using AI to actually help us write our project definitions, which I think is fantastic. It's a real. He's going to give us a demo of actually AI in practice writing project definitions. So that's done. Needs to be edited and scheduled. I'm going to be interviewing a chap who's written a fantastic book for new project managers who have learned the basics of project management but actually want to understand how to do things in the real world. Project discovery is another topic which I'm planning an interview on. So got lots lined up for the quarter 2 and quarter 3 in terms of interviews. We've got Navy Alex from Uganda. This podcast has made me a better project manager. What a fantastic news, because that's exactly what the purpose of this podcast is for. We're coming to the end. So last chance to give questions, and while you're if you have questions, typing your questions into the chat, excuse me, I'll just say that there will be a live stream in April. It will be this first Tuesday of April, the 2nd of April. Happily, the first Tuesday doesn't fall on April Fool's Day, because that would get us into all sorts of trouble. Now, for anyone who notice these sorts of things, you will know that my channel is getting very, very close to 100,000 subscribers. And anyone who takes an interest in YouTube will know that at 100,000 subscribers, YouTube sends us a present. Well, actually, they don't. But you become eligible to apply for what they call a silver play button, which is a nice little plaque, which I quite fancy sticking up there or up there in the background for live streams, which is to say you've got 100,000 subscribers. Now, they do all sorts of checks. Like, firstly, apparently they do kind of look and see if any of the subscribers you've got are dodgy. That is to say, not real subscribers. I think all my subscribers are real. I've not done nothing to actively court fake subscriptions. Except, by the way, using my own personal account to subscribe to online PM courses. But if they won't take one away. Now, I am currently on 98,600, so I've got 1,400 to go, and I'm currently running at about 1,800 to 2,000 subscribers a month. So I reckon before the end of March, or around the end of March, I will hit 100,000. So my next live stream will be a 100,000 subscriber special. If I've hit 100,000, then I will be giving away courses to people who attend. We'll find a kind of competition format or something that will allow me to be generous and give away loads of free stuff. So and I'll be, haven't completely decided yet, but I think what I'm planning to do is look ahead at what I think are, well, actually look back at what has happened in project management, what the big changes in the project management world have been since I started the channel up, or was active in the channel, which would be about 2015 I started the channel, all the way through to today, and then looking forward what I think are the big changes we might expect in project management over the next few years of the channel. So I hope some of you will want to join me for that. Got no questions, so I'm not going to waste your time. I'm going to say thank you very much for attending, and goodbye from me, and I hope to see some of you this time at the start of April, 2nd of April, 5 p.m. UK time. That might not be UTC. The clocks might change between now and then. I'm not sure. So I will always post a link which will allow YouTube to advise you of the time, and I will also always in my communications put in every time zone link so that you can see what the time is in your time zone. So I look forward to seeing you then, and if you are not subscribed to the channel, please subscribe to the channel. If you want to support the channel, I've added, of course you can buy me a coffee. I've also added channel membership, which frankly gives you nothing apart from a shout out at the end of one of these, which I should do, by the way, for the channel members. We've currently got 3 channel members, I believe. So a shout out to all the people who have supported me for, frankly, very little. A couple of behind the scenes posts and stuff. Ubaseki, Andrew Drasdick, and Pony Sareem. Thank you all very much for your support for the channel. I think it's $4.99, $3.99, I think, a month. Gets you not very much, but it's a way of saying thank you if you choose. So thank you to them for supporting me, and to any of you who might be considering it. And as always, if you need to get in touch and ask me a question, please do. Thank you all very much, and we'll end the stream now. If I can find the button. I've got the wrong thing up on screen. Thank you, and goodbye.